Justice Chandrachud, right? Nepotism is constantly being brought up to him, you know?
D.Y. Chandrachud के father longest serving Chief Justice of India थे.
Lawyers who say that हमको तो cases मिलता नहीं है. Judges के बेटे उनको मिल जाता है.
Honestly, what you say does not lack the entirety of truth.
People are basically saying, oh, he only has this job because, you know, his father was in the Supreme Court. Certainly have some advantages.
Genetically, whole debate on nepotism is skewed in itself, right? It's a very...
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Overcorrection. Today we are in studio with Arvind Gopal. He is a lawyer based out of Delhi. He spent 17 years in the fields of tech and cybersecurity and cybercrime law.
There's a lot of people, when there's even conversation about, say, a universal civil code, that it's unconstitutional. So, is it unconstitutional?
Look at it very logically, right? What is the objective of that uniformity that you're trying to bring? Is it that you are providing parity in a level base for everybody? That's a great objective. But in an environment like ours, right, with a huge population and different thought processes, different religions, with its own issues that crop up there, my mother used to keep saying, don't get completely enamored by the fact that you have garnered wealth and power and stuff like that, because with it comes its own set of problems that you don't understand.
I think Jay-Z said it best, more money, more problems. A
17-year-old where she launched products like Appy Fizz and other substitutes, which is brilliant, and it's grown 100-fold since then, right?
This is what I see that privilege and wealth can do to kids. At the age of 17, have industry-changing ideas that could transform a company, or you can give them a Porsche and a credit card at 16 and they're going to go kill two people. Welcome everyone to another episode of The Overcorrection. Today we are in studio with Arvind Gopal. He is a lawyer based out of Delhi. He's worked in the Supreme Court, in the High Courts and District Courts. He spent 17 years in the fields of tech and cybersecurity and cybercrime law. He's bringing a wealth of experience to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you ever so much for having me here. It doesn't feel like it's been 17 years, and fell in love with this a long time ago, continue to be in love with it, and it's great to sort of be sitting here with the two of you who are talking about very relevant issues. It's really, I'm really looking forward to this discussion, to be honest.
Thank you.
So speaking of relevant issues, I think the first thing we have to get down to is the lift system in my building. Okay, so I live in one of these condominiums in Mumbai. A lot of people in Delhi live in these buildings, and we have a segregated lift system. So segregation is alive and well still today. And we basically have 3 lifts for residents and guests, and then we have another lift for staff. And fair enough, you're a resident, you want preferential access, etc. You want your guests preferential access. But now it comes down to who is a guest? Right. So the other day, I was walking out of my house along with my yoga teacher who comes to teach me here, and I saw him taking the staff lift. I was like, hey, sir, why are you taking the staff lift? You're my yoga teacher. You're like a guru to me. You should be afforded every courtesy and more that me and my guests get. And he, in true yogi fashion, said, "Arey, chodo yaar, wo kich-kich karte hain niche." तो मैं लूँगा, मुझे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. I was like, I was like, okay, I also didn't want to make a whole thing out of it, because that's even worse almost on some level, bringing it up. So it's just basically, it highlighted to me that, hey, for some people like me, he's a guest who deserves this courtesy. And for some people, he's just a guy you pay some money to who will come and stretch you out while you have your chai in the morning. And that guy should be in the staff lift,
Yeah.
And I was like, man, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It's arbitrary.
Yeah.
I was like, look, if you want to have preferential treatment, then don't open it to these arbitrary guests, right? All residents takes one lift, and all guests and everyone from outside takes some other lifts. And I was like, man, we really need a goddamn uniform civil code in my building. And then I was like, wow, this could be a problem that extends past the borders of my building.
Absolutely. I think, UCC in India is a big conversation that we'd love to get your thoughts on, Arvind. So, what do you think?
Where does it start? It's obviously, I think on face value, it's obviously a good idea. Right? I mean, we'd all want a uniform code for us to be governed by.
Yeah.
But where do we come into some of the problems?
Let me take a step back, right? On a lighter note, if it wasn't for Rohan living in this condo that we find ourselves in, we wouldn't be in this problem, or I wouldn't be faced with this question, But having said that, on a more serious note, let me pose a query to you before I answer this, right? Do you think that without a segregation even existing, that rules and regulations, or which are codified, which are called legislations and etc., they're uniformly applied or even devised in a uniform manner?
Yeah, good question. I don't think so. I don't think they are anyways.
So, rules and regulations are always made with the idea of the greater good of it being applicable to a larger set of people. So the ones who are going to be shortchanged are always going to be feeling skewed, right? And so therefore, applicability in itself is skewed. So great idea, right? Always been a fan of, having a uniform applicability of how rules and regulations are devised, which is the entire ideology, right? But where on many counts states fall short is the enforcement aspect of it, right? Especially when you're talking about something where it has been in existence and the legislations that will have to be changed, the processes, procedures that will have to be changed have been in existence for long periods of time, right? And that segregation was created because of multiple other factors, right? We live in a secular country, right, which has multiple ideologies that are expended. We live in a country which has multiple religions, which have to be taken into account.
You won't hear that too much in the media, huh? We're like a non-secular one-religion country.
Yeah.
And those are the reasons why India in itself structurally is extremely beautiful. Because it allows you to play with so many factors and then, bring some sort of uniformity. So as much as we'd like to complain, a lot of us, including me, about a lot of things, we have to remember you are catering to such a large space, large number of people, large sets of ideologies. So if you are trying to be uniform in your application of anything, it is a grand task. So you can complain and you can do a multiple set of things, but you also have to be grateful that we don't have political issues which are grave. We don't have, a civil war, for example, that is going on, where we're not at loggerheads or in the midst of an impending dispute with our neighbors, for example. The skirmishes that any system faces. And, man, most importantly, we're free.
I think it's pretty cool. Like you're reading all these articles like World War III approaching, missiles fired by this guy, this one has done this. And it's like India's we're pretty chill now. We're not like worried about being
You
attacked.
said skirmishes apart, pretty balanced time of peace for given our history.
For a long time.
For a long time, yeah. So I guess the broad idea, to sum it up, is for there to be uniformity and applicability, there has to be uniformity and enforcement, which is more often than not very, very hard.
Again, let me give you another little tad bit of fact that you all should be aware of. So the first codified law, when I say codified law, a written legislation, was the Code of Hammurabi. And if you look at the Code of Hammurabi, it addressed codified rules and regulations and systems based on different aspects of life as opposed to viewpoints, right? Which is where religion becomes skewed, right? It's become viewpoints as opposed to it addressing scenarios and situations.
Correct. I think people have the same discussion around like Varna and caste in terms of Hindu culture.
Yeah, so whilst caste had a very negative connotation eventually because of the manner in which it was expended, it was created for the purposes of demarcating sets of
Ways of life for
ways
different
life,
type of people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you ply your trade in a certain manner, you get, sort of put in a certain bracket because that's your subject matter expertise.
And apparently nowhere in the text is the hereditary aspect of it mentioned.
Yeah.
That is the new part added.
And very sadly, when you're talking about the lower end of the scales, whether it is the Shudras or the untouchables as they're referred to, that is denigrative by in itself. And I've fundamentally felt that those are the people who do the heavy lifting, are the ones who are adding the most amount of value. Why? Because their jobs make our lives easier. We can have these discussions regarding lifts, living in a condo, and it's because of that generation which sort of pull the scale, which is what allows us to sit here and do a podcast, for example.
So I had a question, maybe a bit pokier question because I know I do want to get this out, and since you're a lawyer, it'll be important, I think, for you to bring this out to light on this show. But there's a lot of people, when there's even conversation about, say, a universal civil code, that it's unconstitutional. But that seems patently untrue given that it is even stated as an objective within the Constitution. So is it unconstitutional to even aspire towards it? The efficacy of it aside, and whether we can actually do it aside, the goal of actually getting that, is that unconstitutional? Or is that a kind of boogeyman that people have just used as a political tool?
Look, a lot of points of view will always have the boogeyman argument to them. You'll also have to look at it and strip it down, and in my opinion, look at it very logically, right? What is the objective of that uniformity that you're trying to bring? Is it that you are providing parity in a level base for everybody? Right. Agreed. Maybe that's a great objective. But in an environment like ours, right, with a huge population, it goes back to what I was saying, right? And different thought processes, different religions.
So it's kind of like, if I had to say, it's like, sure, it is a noble concept, it's a noble idea. Now, perhaps what the intent behind this UCC is, whether it is actually to make everyone uniform, or could it be viewed as a way to appease, say, a large mass of people against minorities? Yeah. Could the intent be a factor in whether you would deem it to be constitutional or unconstitutional?
Absolutely, right? So what does the Constitution, what does it entail? Just a question to the two of you, right? What is your understanding of what the Constitution is?
Essentially, the set of rules and laws governing our country.
Yeah, okay. That's
as in, like, on a broad way. Right. I don't know if that's what you asked.
So let's
yeah. No, and I was saying to add to that, but ours is, I think, very beautiful in that, yeah, it is the largest and longest continuously edited document, right? Compared to many other constitutions in the world, it's one that's always been adapted, changed, a lot of times for bad, a lot of times for good. So at some level, I also feel like for us, it's even a kind of mission statement for the country, right? That's why we have things like directive state principle policies, right? So there's not just rules, but an ambition on where we want to be. And also something like fundamental duties, which you would not see again, more kind of almost Soviet idea, right? Like, what is your duty as a citizen? Again, so it's more than just rules and regulations. I think it's a mission statement. It's a, for us, I think at some level, philosophical document on how we want to see this country go. And that it's always subject to change as well, given that it has been amended now, I think 106 was the last amendment, right? 106th constitutional amendment. So wonderfully well put, both of you. But let's sort of condense it a little bit, yeah? And relying on our old English masters. It's a Bible, right? For you at the end of the day, right? Which has seen multiple iterations of what the God intended on saying. But yeah. But it is the blueprint on the basis of which that you have sort of built a nation, right? As you said, it's like a playbook, for example, right? And we're sort of deriving from there and then expanding your so-called uniformity, if you want to call it that, which I feel is skewed. And it should be, in some sense. To bring that parity, you need to have it skewed as well. So a lot of these laws were also created because the time period required you to have a dichotomous applicability of certain set of rules and regulations and systems and processes in order to bring about that parity. Because it goes back to that adage of one man's poison being another man's, nectar, if you want to call it that, right? But it is fantastic idea. Whether it's unconstitutional, not constitutional, will be something that will be decided at a later point once you realize what is being fed to you at the end of the day. Yeah, very simplistically put, not complex, not talking about drafting and all of that, which we've all been a part of. But it's only then will you understand what the objective behind that is, right? And then you determine whether that is going to be a correct way of looking at a state of affairs.
I think with the CA and the NRC, when news of it was, really taking the news cycle by storm, there was a lot of outrage before even like the layout plan or the execution plan had even been told to people. So on both sides, there were people complimenting it without knowing what it was going to entail. There were people criticizing without knowing what it was going to entail.
And even now, it's still not even been, only recently, finally, after so many years, CA got officially kind of
notified, right? So I think people jump to conclusions. I know we spoke about this. Actually, that's one of the things I did want to ask you when we were talking on WhatsApp. Like, there's a tendency for us to jump to conclusion or an assessment based on whatever limited information we have, right? Which is generally filled with bias. So I'm sure that in the legal field you see that having an implication, right?
No, 100%. See, it took a long time for court to even accept the fact that WhatsApp was a medium of communication, which happened in 2018 with the privacy judgment coming into force and being so what I'm trying to say is that even the law considers these mediums to be tertiary information which is not reducible. Yeah, it has to carry a lot of weight and it has to be proven, and a very high threshold for it to be even acceptable for that matter. So, this is my fundamental problem. The digital transformation is absolutely awesome. Yeah, at one level, because it provides, access to great information, quick dissemination of information is very easy, which are all supremely great positives, right? And you have a repository, which is like, such a great thing to have instead of, I love books, but I don't mean to sound like I'm like ancient, but when I started out, we didn't have computers in the office. So the only thing that you relied on was a trove of books, right? We had a whole library and that's an expensive proposition, but at the same time, very time consuming. But the great fun in that was that you went down to the crux of the issue, researched everything under the sun before you reached a conclusion. Right. Yeah. The problem today is that we're so quick to get to that conclusion without doing the analysis. What is the scientific principle? You take the issue, you analyze it, you experiment it for yourself to understand what that analysis entails, and then you draw a conclusion based on that, right? So if that is not being followed and you're just,
now it's like, let me look up the conclusion I want to have. Do I want it from Faye D'Souza or Palki Sharma? Like this is what you're choosing. It's like, you go online and, look, we don't expect everyone to do meticulous research on everything. The point of commentators is that there are trustworthy people you can look at, and but certainly something is lost there, an overcorrection, if you will.
Overcorrection is the right way to put it, because my father, who was a journalist for 50 years, and I keep pulling his leg and saying, and it is true, the fourth estate kind of sold out eons ago. So well before that, all of us sort of have been embracing it. They sold out a long time ago. So, but at the same time, now with multiple ideologies being spewed, easily accessible, the problem with people is they're adopting it without even analyzing whether it makes any sense, or forget everything else, whether it works for you. Yeah, let's stop looking at it from a greater good and, I want like 55 lifts and everybody should have access to it and stuff like that. But let's look at it from the point of view as to whatever that is being expended, is it working for you? Then we can start saying that let's replicate this model and uniformly apply it to everybody, right? So when that doesn't happen is where the issue arises, for that matter. And then you have the complexities of, let's look at it as this condo, right? Why are the floors which are higher more expensive? Because, and the society works in the same manner, right? The 1% which lives in the 1% of the building are the ones who are ruling the roost, to whom probably that drift principle does not apply. And states and governance and etc. works in the same manner.
Yeah, they get preferential parking. These buildings are crazy. They're not even designed to run without labor. Like the parkings that are sold to you are so far and inconvenient that it relies on this principle that they know you have a driver. Otherwise no one's gonna, and parking is impossible now in this city. Like however much space you have, you will never have enough because there's like 3 cars to every person or every family in the building.
Yeah. It's excess. It's a lot of excess. With success, you get excess, I guess. Yeah. So it's part and parcel of it.
Yeah, my mother used to keep saying, don't get sort of completely enamored by the fact that you have garnered wealth and power and stuff like that, because with it comes its own set of problems that you don't understand.
I think Jay-Z said it best. More money, more problems.
99 problems. Okay, fair. Yeah. I don't want to repeat the rest, but fair.
I don't think lawyer Arvind Gopal, who also listens to gangster rap.
Oh yeah, for a
there we
long
go.
time.
I love it.
Yeah, long time.
But I guess the other thing we wanted to ask you, and I know if there are some kind of guardrails around what you can say and what you can't, please feel free to
Plead the fifth.
or I guess enact them. But I'm curious about, we've spoken a lot about nepotism on the podcast in terms of, what are the industries where something like nepotism is frankly okay? Like who cares?
Yeah, like Bollywood.
Yeah,
Please.
Yeah.
Cast your kids in your movies. Make one shitty movie after another. Who gives a shit?
Yeah, nobody really. But
You
like
know?
when it comes down to politics and medicine and engineering or whatever it might be,
And law, the judiciary.
and the judiciary, right? So which is generally a big argument that how come India is one of the only countries where judges choose judges, but then the apex court struck down the NJAC within their reasons, right? So what can you, if anything, comment on that, even if not specifically on that, philosophically? What do you see as the contentious issue there?
Look, to begin with, this whole debate on nepotism is skewed in itself, right? It's a very incorrectly used word, unfortunately. Look, the whole world works on the basis of bias, and nepotism is a form of bias, right? And human beings are biased by nature. Anywhere you put a human being, they will form an opinion on the basis of whatever that they want to form an opinion on. So you're telling me that's not nepotist by nature? And honestly, the adage is that you pick the strongest in the herd, right?
Correct.
So if you pick the strongest in the herd, you would expect that the progeny of that strongest is probably going to be stronger.
Going to certainly have some
Probably-
advantages.
Yes, genetically. Let's talk about it scientifically, right?
Yeah.
So stronger structure, good constitution, etc. Great advantages to have, right?
Arvind's not from a lawyer family, by the way. Huh? He's not defending himself.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like it. But so that's my debate against it, really. In what context do you
Yeah, so you
using it?
brought up basically you brought about nature, right? If you had to guess, someone whose parents are in a particular profession probably have some genetic code lingering in there that will bias them towards being good at that more than someone who doesn't have that. Nature. Nurture as well. You grow up around it. You have two parents. I can only imagine what Arvind's going to be as like a parent, just like provide your evidence that you did not eat the Kit Kat.
Yeah, no. I'd probably eat the Kit Kat. But, yeah. But the only thing is I'd share it with the kid as well. So, which is why kids are very fond
But
of me.
the point being, you will grow up around that personality type. So if you have two lawyer parents, you're going to grow up around it. You're going to feed off that information. It's going to be dinner table conversation too. We hear this a lot about politics, man. Like, I know a couple of people in politics, and they said, man, when I was 6-7 years old, I heard all this stuff fall on my ears when I didn't understand it. That's actually how babies learn languages. You're supposed to speak around them before they understand it. They kind of learn it by rote and then have some time to process it. When we spoke to Dharma Wiki, they spoke about how Sanskrit teaching follows this. Like, rote education gets a big bad rap, right? But they're like, no, there's this whole principle around rote. Like,
Shruti and Smriti.
No, it's a very, very logical principle in my opinion. I'll tell you why, and that's a great thing that you've brought up, because this was the dinner table conversation that we were having yesterday, and it stemmed from AI. Right. Okay, and the evolution of it. That is not rote learning, nah. Why is it that is it biased generally? And coming back to this nepotism subject matter also, if the information being doled out to you is biased by nature, which it is fundamentally, because it's someone's point of view that is being expended, you are going to form a basis on the basis of that person's opinion. So it is biased by nature. So
anything that's not like bias, you're just going to be sitting and talking about things like, that wall is white. Do
Yeah.
you agree? Yes. This wall is brown. Do you agree? Amazing.
And if I was to complain and say I'm partially colorblind, it looks different to me, you can't really debate that, can you? So the thing is that, going back to your question, Puru, about where it could be applicable in all professions across the board, right? Why not? My reasoning is exactly what Rohan and I have been discussing for a while, which is that you would think that you would pick the best out of the herd, right? And if you've been sort of inculcated in an environment which is more assimilative with that profession or thought process or whatever that you want to call it, then in that case, you are probably going to be more tailor-made or moldable to that particular profession or task or subject matter that you're sort of... I'm not saying it's 100% foolproof. Rote learning doesn't work at all times as well, because it, again, depends on the ability to grasp on how values have been expounded as well, right? For that matter, where you're encouraged to do some of those things. So I think this is a really silly way of
right now, I mean, just in the news cycle, Justice Chandrachud, right? He's giving a lot of interviews right now, and nepotism is constantly being brought up to him, and people are basically saying, oh, he only has this job because, his father was in the Supreme Court. Yeah. I was like, I don't think you can just say that. I don't...
Yeah, that's not true. Like, obviously he had to go through the same thing as everybody else. But the idea is that, is there a higher chance? But like you said, it's kind of a landmine.
Yeah, we were talking.
It's not about tricky. Yeah. Again, let's look at it from the perspective that just because you've been handed the baton doesn't mean you're going to complete the race. You need to still be able to run that damn course. Yeah. So at times, when you're looking at it from the outside, and you probably can complain that you were not given the baton and somebody else was handed over the baton, he still has to run the goddamn race, man. You were just bloody having to witness it sitting outside, right? You're not expending yourself in that manner.
That's what they always say, right? With family businesses, it's like first generation builds, second generation develops, third generation destroys.
Yeah. But we are seeing a lot of places where maybe this is also a cliche. People like to hate on privileged people.
Look at the eat the rich
type of mentality that, at some point you're going to get so rich that you're going to want to be a complete piece of shit and you're going to mess stuff up.
Yeah.
But look at India's greatest multi-generational entrepreneurial story of the Ambanis.
Yeah.
Right.
Or take the late Ratan Tata himself. Right?
Take the Tatas,
what a legacy
take
to
the
build.
newer generation of Tatas.
He got the baton, but he did something with it.
Yeah. The new generation of Ambanis.
There have been a lot of stories of that nature, right? Yeah. So we've got lots of examples.
Yeah.
Now, how they've plied their trade and how they've expended themselves is another sort of question.
Fair. I'm just saying that the Ambani kids right now don't have to work. Their parents didn't have to work. These kids could just be partying and living that life that it could afford them, have their wedding on 365 days a year. But no, they're working, they're doing all sorts of things.
So Ambani's, because of the wedding, it's been sort of, gone in a very different direction. Let's take another example that I was reading about recently. The Parley company, which made Fruity, for example. The story goes that the daughter, who was 17, and that's when she entered the company, right? And the reliance on Fruity apparently was close to 98%, right? Yeah, and she brought it down and diversified that portfolio, where she launched products like Appy Fizz and other nutritional substitutes, which is brilliant, yeah? And brought the reliance on Fruity down to 43%, and it's grown like some 100-fold since then, right? Which is absolutely awesome. Imagine that is great. A great example for how nepotism has worked out, right? You had a 17-year-old. At 17, what the hell were each one of us doing?
It's only because she was at those Parley dinner table things from the age of 10, and she just noticed things. She was like, hey, probably y'all talk about Fruity a lot, but I didn't know that y'all also make Appy Fizz. Yeah. Maybe it starts off like that as a 12-year-old saying it. And then that builds like, hey, I love Appy Fizz.
No, it was actually her idea to even launch this. So it did not even exist.
It didn't even exist.
Didn't even...
or something like that,
Yeah, there was an Appy that existed, but it was an Appy Fizz,
not a
it was white-coloured, like Tetra Pak.
And it was just juice. It wasn't a soda.
It was just juice. Yeah, it was just juice.
Good shit.
Probably one of the better ones out there, because... anyway, yeah.
And then I've always just thought that, so you have these great stories, and then there's the Pune Posh case, right? So like this is what I see that privilege and wealth can do to kids. You can set your kids up to, at the age of 17, have industry-changing ideas that could transform a company, or you can give them a Porsche and a credit card at 16 and they're going to go kill 2 people. I just truly believe that what this romantic idea is, that privilege and nepotism, and call it what you will in that zone, is always a bad factor. I truly believe now it is an accentuating factor, which means your worst qualities are going to become terrible and your best qualities are going to be harnessed for good.
For me, I genuinely believe that if a strong base has been set already, it is very difficult for additives to come and influence you for a long period of time for you to fundamentally shift away from that base. Right. So if the value structure has... privilege is not the problem. Yeah? It's just saying that you've been handed a stick. Goes back to that example, right? Yeah. The problem is when you are running that race and you already are thinking that you're going to win it. Yeah. That is the problem. It's the entitlement which is the problem. The arrogance is the problem. The ego is the problem. It has nothing to do with the fact that you've been given the car to bloody drive. But how you drive it, what you've been told that it ought to be utilized for, the same thing probably, and pointing no fingers, if the person has helped as opposed to, sort of made it into a more agitative situation, the manner in which we look at some of these things would be completely different, right? And what a poster board that it would have created for if the situation had been just sort of been dealt with a little differently. Yeah. But like I said, the powers in force will always have an upper hand because the rules and regulations have never been created for them. It is a tool that has been created for being able to control a large set of people.
Yeah, rules for thee, but not for me. Right?
Yeah. It's always it'll always be the case.
Yeah,
but for me, it's like just in public office is where I have the strongest kind of moral obligation to it. Whether it's objection, I have the strongest moral objection to it, right? So whether it's privilege or I think you nailed it on entitlement being the problem. Again, I don't care if some Bollywood actors are entitled. Like it doesn't. I see there's a kind of there's a deeper issue when it's in like important roles in public office where you have a mandate to help people.
Yeah.
Right.
Like whether it's the judiciary or
wherever.
Like the FSSAI or whatever.
Yeah,
some
or
place
your politician, right?
Or your politician.
Itself.
Even with medicine, I can say like if you have a private practice, give it to your kid. Like they've become a doctor, give it to your kid. It doesn't matter. It's your private wealth to do whatever you want with it.
Also make sure that person is going to follow the same value in the path.
But that comes to setting that strong base that you mentioned, right? I like that point.
But I'm saying like that's not even your job as a parent giving your kid this. The job is of the government to ensure that, hey, our medical system, to become a doctor, you have to pass through. Now, using privilege to circumvent that system, absolutely ridiculous.
So let's play with another example, okay? The one state that has been able to replicate this to a large extent and drill down into a developed country is not very far from us. It's Singapore. Right. The only advantage that they have is that it's tiny as hell. It's smaller than Delhi, for example, right? So Delhi is so big, anyway. So but what they did beautifully, in my opinion, is in order to weed out corruption and red tapeism completely, what they did was they did a comparative analysis between private industry and governance, right? And then they said, how much is who getting paid? Highest in the private industry. I'll give you a tad bit more than that. So you don't have to worry about cutting corners because you feel that you're in there for 5 years or a limited period of time or whatnot. When you put that thought out of you weed out that little, chance of you wearing away, that aids the cause immensely, right? Look at how that nation has developed, man. In a short span of time, we've been around with independence, being granted to us for 75 years now, a little over, tad bit over. But I feel that we still have a very long way to go. We can have these very, long-term, viewpoints on how the barometer is the US or England or Australia or whatever that might be, right? But we're very far behind.
Yeah, I feel like whenever we talk about any problem in our country, from like, it could be like road issues, it could be election issues, it could be health infrastructure issues, everyone comes down to the same point. It's like, man, but the system, man, the people, they're corrupt, there's this, there's that. I was like, you know what? Fine. Why does not someone, and it would seem like a very selfish goal, run on a whole platform of, I'm going to pay government employees more? Because I don't see how you're going to address any of those other issues if every time I bring one of them up, you're like, yeah, but man, these guys aren't paid well enough. So I was like, okay, fine, fuck it. You can't fix anything. Just run. This next 4 years, all we're going to figure out is how to pay our government employees better so they don't have to take bribes, so they don't have to be corrupt, they don't have to let things slide. Maybe then one of our 500 other problems you won't just bitch about.
Yeah, but I think now the kind of catch-22 is that I don't think you could pay some of these guys enough to offset how much they'd actually make through corruption.
That's the flip side. It's like, okay, we're going to make government average salaries 50 lakhs a year. It's like, dude,
no, that's like...
I'm going to be pulling my kids out of there. They're not going to go to Switzerland ski camps anymore.
Dude,
50 lakhs a year, not enough. So,
yeah.
And then fuck it. Then just keep running.
It's a very difficult problem to solve.
Yeah, no. See, that in itself is difficult.
Yeah.
Because that's now you're talking about bringing parity and uniformity.
Yeah.
And that again is
It comes
skewed
back
because
to,
of bias that have been created because of various reasons that have been, perpetuating for a long period of time. The thing is, the problem that this country has is not anything else. Man, the size itself is so huge.
It's just gargantuan, yeah. It's insane.
I've asked this question on a number of occasions, right? And I falter on this the answer to this question as well. Name the 7 sisters.
Northeast.
Yes.
I can do that.
Yeah.
You can do it.
Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, Mizoram, Manipur. Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, Manipur, Mizoram, Nagaland, Arunachal Pradesh.
Sikkim. Yeah. So you're probably you're probably one of the few who's been able to answer that. I was stumped the first time I was asked, and I'm someone who's voraciously read, right? But we've not even gone into the political system that needs to be established and infrastructure in that beautiful part of the world, or forget the world, our state, which belongs to us, and they are our people. Though, when you have this size, having been a government council, the complexities that come with it, with governance, and especially with the state system that exists, it's a lot of moving parts, man. So which is why I'm not defending anyone here, but at the same time, we have to look at it from a much broader perspective. Yeah. Stop drilling down to maybe lift issues that Rohan is facing on a daily basis.
Pertinent topics.
Yeah.
But like incremental change is all we can aspire for. I think.
And it starts with, as silly and how do I put it, a rundown thing that was said to us by our parents a number of times, that change starts with you. And it does. Because it goes back to what Rohan was pertinently saying, right? If I was to start a campaign today that I'm going to follow the lanes, the traffic problems are going to be addressed, man, especially in a city like Bombay.
I was going to say there's a great story which maybe I think even Rohan would likely remember because he told me it's actually about his father. And I'm like, that's where change starts from within. Like, I remember you were saying, like, when they'd go running on Worli Sea Face, even at 5 a.m, if it's a red light, he stops at the signal.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do that too. Like, why do I need to break that signal?
And my dad would he'd stop and he knew we're pissed.
No.
And he's just waiting for one of us to be like,
just break
just go now, just go.
But I think that's how it has to be. You have to really believe in that system for it to work.
Why? Oh, not only believe,
you
right?
You have to act properly when no one is watching and you are 100% sure you will never get caught.
Yeah.
That is when your actions count.
Yeah, okay. That's a great perspective, but there are 2 ways to do it, right? One is that you drill down the principles that are going to be carried forward. Difficult proposition, primarily because, you form opinions yourselves, right? But the other thing is it goes back to what I was talking about, Code of Hammurabi, right? So that was based on the retributive theory, which means that eye for an eye. So the punishment is equivalent to the action that you've taken. So if you break the goddamn red light, if I take away your car and I suspend your license for 12 months, you will be like miserable and you'll never ever do it again. Simple tasks.
Yeah, and
right?
the law might actually require that. We could make the law to do that. But if I'm going to pay a police officer 500 rupees and bribe my way out of it, like I said, people will then say like, these police officers aren't paid enough to enforce the law. We have to pay them more. So I keep I'm coming back to that point again. I just find it silly that every problem anyone ever brings up, they just will say that, yeah, man, but it's like this in India. Aisa hi chalta hai. People who run, like we were talking, like, you know how much cash people have on them? Like for no reason, I like go to a restaurant. I go to a restaurant with someone. Someone will pay 5,000 in cash. I'm like, dude, why would you have 5,000 in cash? You went to an ATM to get 5,000 bucks out to pay for this dinner when you could have just paid by card? I don't think so.
I can't remember the last time I went to an ATM, man. I don't even know if my debit card functions, for that matter. But having said that, you know, what I find very strange is the fact that there is no want and need to change. That is my fundamental problem, because as much as we can sit here and have multiple podcasts and very, you know, out there discussions about all of these subject matters, if we don't make those small incremental changes, as Puru, you were saying, then it's going to be a difficult proposition out there. We can sit and complain about things until the cows come home, but nothing is going to happen. So small things, if the seatbelt rule is there, it's for your own bloody goddamn good.
Can you believe that?
So just do it, man.
Helmets. People walk around. Dude's riding a scooter. His wife and 1-year-old kid are behind him without helmets.
Yeah.
And he's like, look, I've got my helmet.
But I think depending on the state, the law mandates only the person in the front has to wear it or something crazy like that.
Yeah. It's only after Mr. Mistri's passing where
they changed the law, right?
Yeah, we changed a lot. But then, why do you need a drastic thing like that to happen
to
for
a rich
it to
person?
be, to a privileged individual?
Yeah.
Not questioning his privileged background, but the fact that it has to have such a dramatic, you know, thing for it to happen, for it to percolate down, right?
Yeah, thousands of these are happening all the time. We just don't give a shit. This was Mr. Mistry, so it made the news cycle. It made people awake and alert to it. Otherwise, people are speeding. It's commonplace. They don't care. It's understood. You're on the highway, bro. You can't go below 140.
Yeah, and you know what was very annoying was when I moved back from England and back to India. I mean, people still call me a grandmother on the road because I want to follow rules and follow lanes and stuff like that. It was just crazy, man. We had an office in Noida, which is in UP, but it's part of NCR. So I'd have to drive all the way from Dwarka, which is one end to the other. And by the time you got to Noida, they never followed traffic rules, right? Traffic lights made no difference to them. It was a red light, and the people are honking at you from the back.
You're the problem.
You are the problem, right? Because you don't know how to operate the car. Nah? Yeah. It's got wheels. You press the accelerator, it moves. So that's
pull up your first time chala rahe ho kya?
Yeah. So the thing is, you know, if we don't change mindset, then for us to sit here, we will be complaining about every Tom, Dick and Harry situation.
So wanted to get your take on some of these fun. So I heard about this crazy case. A woman's husband passed away at a Disneyland by eating like severely contaminated food at one of their restaurants.
Correct. And I think it was an allergy-related issue.
Allergy
which wasn't
related. Everyone's informed Disneyland is completely at fault. She goes and, as anyone would, sues Disneyland for severe negligence, blah, 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 blah. She gets a cease and desist or whatever type of letter you would get saying, hey, by the way, you can't sue us. You know why? Because you subscribe to Disney Plus. And you know that
a trial. Not even a full subscription.
You are a trial subscriber to Disney Plus. And in that trial subscription, the contract you have signed states that any disputes with Disney cannot go to court and they have to be settled in arbitration.
Yeah, arbitration or out of court from
Or
what
out
they
of court.
claim. Yeah, you'll have to dive
Now,
deeper into it. Yeah.
Disney's lawyers later withdrew this claim that they
Smart
made.
Alex, eh?
Yeah, it's pretty smart.
But to make the claim, I mean, it's not even like this claim got auto-generated, right? This woman's husband died. Her husband died. She sent them a letter that they should expect. They should be proactively, firstly, reaching out and doing something, but she sent them a letter. Their first move was not sympathy or like, let us do what we can, let us, try
Then
to
you are
address this problem.
admitting guilt, no? So you can't.
Yeah, but I mean, like, they can do something. Yes, admit guilt. Admit guilt. Like, what is this? Basically admitting guilt. Admit guilt. What is this idea that you can't admit guilt to making a mistake anymore?
I'm going to switch here. तो हम ये कहना चाहते हैं आपसे कि देखिए आपको इस प्रोफेशन में ये सिखाया जाता है कि आप सिर्फ काला और सफ़ेद देखते हैं. हाँ, तो आपके लिए ग्रे नहीं एग्जिस्ट करता. तो आपको अगर अपना काम ढंग से करना है तो आपको वो सिर्फ काला और सफ़ेद के बीच में काम करना है आपने. अब बात ये हुई कि अगर वो अपना काम ढंग से नहीं करते तो वो प्रीएम्प्टिवली उस क्लॉज के बारे में नहीं सोचते टू इनकॉर्पोरेट इट इनटू द टर्म्स एंड कंडीशंस एंड द कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स एंड एग्रीमेंट्स, राइट? That is why I keep saying again and again to people like my wife, who's a founder now of an organization, to multiple other people who have advised across the board, that lawyers are not an impediment. Okay, we've been trained to look at risk from multiple perspectives and build fail safes so that risk doesn't arise. We are always looked at, as the people who come with the hacksaw at the end of the day and cut down the tree, when that's not the case, right? I am actually determining why you shouldn't be building around that tree because that may fall or it'll be an impediment, yeah? Or you will be an impediment to that damn ecosystem.
Yeah, I think you're talking like lawyers get a bad rap, right?
Yeah.
Like, no one wants to go to a doctor, no one wants to go to a lawyer. Like, you just don't want these people in your life. Shit has gotten fucked up if they are like, if you're calling a doctor or a lawyer every day, I'm sorry. You probably have something seriously wrong going on.
Let's just take a step back and go back to the previous question, right? Because I don't think we've addressed it really. Look, the court has already provided its opinion on how ridiculous the proposition being put forward by Disney folks are. But then you signed up for that, right? So you should have been aware of it in some sense. So this goes back into what we were discussing earlier. Rohan and I were discussing this. And I was telling him, you'll take any of these companies, terms and conditions, and not really the main agreement, because this is factored into terms and conditions. And they will have a clause in the main agreement which says that terms and conditions form a part of the main contract. So they ought to be read as one, right? In simplistic terms. And the thing is that that's why whenever we're signing up on the internet now, or once tech became more utilized for that matter, we had a very bad habit of clicking on I agree without really seeing what's there, right? And
Still do. Three times.
No. I'll tell you how it's evolved because I've designed some of this. So I'm just coming to that, right? So when privacy and data protection became an issue, you started looking at consent a little bit more differently. It wasn't implied any longer. It was informed. So now you have a little box that pops up which says that please be aware of the following terms and conditions, and only once you are able to scroll through it and then you are able to click on it. That is because of the fact that you're being informed of what you're signing up for. Earlier, you didn't have to do any of that. You just click, I agree, and then you go and form, whatever account that you're creating. So, which is why lawyers play subject matter experts. Let's put it that way. It's not just lawyers, right? They play a big role in you being able to discern and also cater for any of the risks that may arise, right? So which is why you should go to a doctor and you should do a medical examination every now and then.
That reminds me, I should get mine done as well very soon. But
No, and I think the free market, like on some level, does notice. Do you remember, like years back, it's like mutual fund investments are subject to market risk, please. And then there was this whole spate of ads that came out, like mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Please, it ought to be dishonored. So, like a law did change for the comprehensibility of this, but I remember people noticing it as sort of like it's part of this. Hey, this brand is open about their thing. You know, like it became a tool for marketing that hey, we really want you to read what is happening and what's going on. Like if you look at some nutrition products right now, like Whole Truth, right? Their whole thing is based on this idea that, hey, before we used to hide our ingredients in the back. Now the law has not changed. You can still put all your ingredients on the back, but they're putting them on the front.
yeah, no, it's not the law has changed. The law is just being implemented. Okay, remember, you've got something called the legal metrology, branch of law, right? So which sort of essentially looks at, and it's a derivative of an old English legislation which was called the Weights and Measurements Act, right? Which determined how labeling ought to be done on products and services and which gives a descriptor on what it entails, right? So when you start implementing that, then you have stuff like this happening, right? Where you are now being scrutinized for what the hell you're saying. So you're going to be held up for that because the consumer forums have become very, very active, right? So take a little analysis and look at it from the consumer forums perspective, and they've been super active, and they need to be applauded for it, man. They're really good. And very consumer focused for that matter. So that's a great thing for uniformity and parity to
Consumer
be established.
activism, food farmer, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So the thing is that you have to look at it. I instead of looking at it super granularly, you need to understand what the story behind this situation is. We're very quick to start whipping out the whip and start just throwing it around just because you're just seeing somebody saying something and giving their opinion on it.
And in the end, I think there has to be an onus on the consumer as well, right? Like talking about doing, like my favorite is, I feel like the most informed consent today is like on a packet of smokes, but it's addictive. So like you see someone who's literally like dying as you're buying the product and you'll still do it, right? So I think the addictive products is where informed consent also fails, right? Technology, IT, Instagram, whatever, cigarettes, alcohol, it's bad. They're even telling you, they're even showing you, but you do it.
Hilarious. We went to the Supreme Court when we were trying to establish that the packaging has to denote the detrimental aspects of cigarette smoking, right? It was watered down, obviously, because of the powers that are plying their trade in the corridors, and you had scorpions being depicted on boxes. I don't know how often that you encountered these. And we went back to court and tried to explain to them, how is this going to have any effect on dissuading people from... What does a scorpion have to do with
This looks
smoking?
like a pretty cool brand.
Like I remember when I was studying international law, we studied Philip Morris International versus Australia, which is like a crazy, very interesting case.
Incidentally, a client of mine.
That labeling case and how, because they said now in Australia it's like literally nothing. It's like a white box.
It's
and
a
it'll say
uniform
Marlboro.
packing.
Uniform packing.
Yeah.
But like,
No branding,
they said that taking away our distinctive Marlboro red is literally a copyright. How can you do that? So, I mean, it was a long fight.
So that stems into our wanting to talk about IP.
So let's get into that.
I wanted to ask you, since, and I feel like this is the perfect way to even end the discussion, since your domain now is in the intellectual property space, or it has been for some time.
No, it has been for 17 years.
For 17 years. I wanted to know, now in India, given there's such a huge push now on entrepreneurship, you have some really exciting startups coming with a lot of new, fresh technology. Do we have the IP law framework to support this kind of ideation and innovation? Because I know there's been stories in the past, say, I think there's a recent story even in China where like they bring a company in, they work in China for some time, they just basically then do a formal kind of form of IP theft and then start that same thing and then kick them out of the country, right? So are we protected against this stuff?
China is a different beast. Yeah. Okay, I've done raids there, of course remotely, because entering the country is very difficult.
Ron and I were talking about this. If the production center itself is compromised, then the counterfeiting industry, it's going to sort of have an ecosystem which is large, man. I can tell you, because I've worked in that area for a long period of time of piracy and counterfeiting, that the industry on the whole in one segment, for example, let's take luxury items, for example, is greater than some of the defense budgets that states have. That's how big that market is, okay? So, and in some sense, you will have alternatives because, accessibility is what you're looking at if you truly want to subscribe to this uniformity principle, really. So, the thing is that we have a lot of systems and processes in place. Remember, this is one of the few concepts that is sort of uniformly applicable across the board. When I say across the board, I mean there'll be comparative analysis that will highlight differences with respect to process and procedure.
You're talking between countries.
Yeah, between countries and from a committee perspective. But principally, it remains the same. Right? So, certain things are only protectable in certain, ways. So a logo that you see, say for example, the half-eaten apple, belongs to Apple because it's trademarked in that manner. Okay. The same way, the manner in which that it's depicted is also copyrightable, for that matter, because it's an artistic work in some sense, right? Similarly, packaging also falls into that because it forms into a subset of trademarks which is called trade dress. So, your dairy milk or Cadbury wanted to do that for their purple packaging of dairy milk, right? And the ones who did successfully do it was Toblerone for the triangular chocolate, right? So, and then you have other subsets of IP, for example. If since we're on that Apple subject for that matter, I'll go back to this. My wife is going to hit me because she thinks it's damn boring for me to do it for the 50,000th time. But yeah, if, for example, what's written on the packaging of an Apple box is that it's designed in California, but assembled in China or whatever else it is, right? If this was originating from a particular place, and the easiest example for that is Champagne, because Champagne originated from the Champagne district, which is where it derives its name from, then it is called a geographical indication, right? So yeah, GI tag, yeah. So GI is another thing that exists that has been around for donkey's years, but it is now probably being recognized to be another avenue through which that you could sort of protect your works and your products and services and etc. Right?
Basmati rice is also being
GI tag
protected
product.
in the same way, right?
But that's a fight between Pakistan and us.
there's a big.
So trademark is a source identifier. Copyright is something which is an inherent right, which is why we don't need to probably register it. So then you have semiconductors, which is another subset of patents, which is a world in itself, right? Which is beautiful. Yeah, I recently advised someone on it, and I read through paper just to get myself on board because I read it a long time ago. Man, it is beautiful. I imagine something which is as big as your fingernail, which has hundreds of components, and that in itself is an industry, and that is one chipset in that one machine that you have, which is operating this damn mic, and it's just a small little microchip that's doing the job, right? So it's a damn cool state of affairs. But at the same time, we've also globally got a long way to go, primarily because something as simple as a centralized repository doesn't exist. So if I want to enter multiple markets or establish myself in a certain market, it's very difficult for me to still continue to go and, try and find who exists, who's the one who's violating, who is it that I need to protect myself against. That is why a repository is very, very important.
Does it start with, say, economic alliances, and do we have like cross-national IP laws? Like India will have an agreement with the UK and Canada saying that, hey, if we register something here, it falls under an IP law there.
Supremely awesome question, I must say that. Because, there's something called cross-border reputation that exists, okay? So that's fundamentally a principle as far as the law is concerned, and that's why I said, right, principally, it operates the same way.
You'll get like a reputation.
You'll get a process change somewhere, right? Some places will say that it's from a regulatory perspective, we're going to curtail the number of years that you can protect it, for example, right? Or it'll be...
APAs will usually have terms on all of this, right?
All of this, and procedure will change. एक बोलेगा कि 5 महीने में मिल जाएगा आपको, दूसरा बोलेगा 18 महीने चाहिए मुझे इसको आपको ग्रांट करने के लिए. हाँ, तो ये सिस्टमैटिकली चेंज होगा, पर फंडामेंटली जो उसका प्रिंसिपल है, जिस हिसाब से उसको आप प्रोटेक्ट करते हैं, दैट विल नॉट चेंज, right? So that is very, very important to understand that. So cross-border reputation is supremely awesome. So we argued this matter where I can actually name them now, but yeah, I'll do that. It'll be fun because it'll be relatable. So Crust is a very popular pizza chain in Australia.
Crust.
Okay, yeah, okay. Crust. Yeah.
With a K?
C.
With a
C.
Okay,
C.
I thought
Yeah.
they do K.
Actually, Crust. Yeah. Great pizzas, by the way. Yeah. Now, they had a huge chain. I had no clue that they existed, right? And we were trying to figure out. And somebody had started Krusty in India, right? So the law firm that I was working for at that point of time got the matter, and we were trying to figure out how is it that you sort of file a suit for infringement against someone who doesn't have commercial operations in the country. Right. Yeah. So what we looked at, and it was very interesting, it was done by the partner in the firm, and it was beautiful. And they said, let's look at numbers of immigration that takes place between both countries. Yeah, so for you to be able to, so it's a source identifier thing, right? When you see the half-eaten apple, you automatically think of Apple. You don't think of Microsoft, do you? You don't. Right? That's the power of that branding, right? So we said if you are able to show that there are enough people who are going between India and Australia, then you can make that argument that the source identifier is etched in the consumer's mind. So the principle that exists in trademark law is that an average consumer has imperfect recollection. And that imperfect recollection has a positive connotation. I just need to be able to show you something which looks similar. You will automatically, your brain appends it with that.
It's like people, they have their voice, right? Like Amitabh Bachchan's voice. Just because you're an Amitabh Bachchan impersonator, right, you can't go do an ad in Amitabh Bachchan's voice because you'll be like...
that's likeness.
It's likeness, it's likeness.
Yeah.
Well, didn't Scarlett Johansson, she tried to sue Apple, right? Because they tried to use her
voice for Siri,
or something like that.
Yeah. So that's why, personality rights and likeness and sound have become so bloody valuable. And for a long time, some of us have been shouting and saying that this is possibly the most valuable asset, despite it being intangible by nature, right? Yeah. And that is what makes it even more exciting, because when it's intangible, when you can't see it, feel it, or do any of those things, how in God's name do you devise methods and rules and processes around to make sure that it is protected? So how do you do that, right? That's what is supremely exciting. And remember, tech is so lightning, fast-paced. Yeah. What you and I are using commercially was something that was devised 12 years ago.
Yeah. Like you were saying, like Apple probably has the iPhone 20 ready.
Yeah. No. So this is the funny bit. So when we passed out of our masters, some of my friends who were doing engineering, for example, they one of them joined Apple, right? And he was the one who highlighted the fact, and this was back in 2010 when we were studying. So he tells me, Arvind, man, I'm completely flummoxed by the pace at which they've gone, man. They've got products lined up for the next 10 years and they don't have to think. Yeah. And the smarter thing is they'll give you incremental changes by telling you brand new camera with aperture, tech, which is like, sort of taken it up by a notch because some few grains in the picture have disappeared, right? But they're selling it to you for an astronomical amount of money. But that is what the tech industry does. It is so fast-paced, and the law is always going to be 20 steps behind.
Did you
I think
see
Apple is a luxury product company hidden as a tech company now.
Yeah, well,
Because what new have they given
it's
us in
become
tech?
many things,
a lot, but they're at the
Not
forefront
new.
of a lot of
They were
it.
the forefront, but what in the last 5 iPhones? Someone tell me a tangible reason to pay 1 lakh every year to
no
up your
tangible
phone.
reason.
There's no
man.
tangible reason.
Yeah, there's
But then there's no
absolutely
tangible reason to even
tangible
pay 20,000 or 10,000.
I mean, yeah.
You know what I mean?
10,000 for a phone seems about
Why
right.
would you live in the condo that you're living in, not in the
You know,
building that's next door?
I'll tell you with some things, like I get it to some extent, there's no excuse for Bombay's real estate, but there's a tangible up you get. Like I look at luxury bags as like the epitome of explaining this thing. Like, you know, there is nothing you could do to this goddamn bag. It would have to levitate, hover behind
I hope
me,
your wife is listening, huh?
and be bulletproof to protect from anyone who might want to shoot me.
Oh, I have a very interesting story.
For it to be worth 1 lakh even. And this is now 1 lakh is a cheap luxury bag today. 1 lakh you can't get a good bag.
Ridiculous. Anyway, so without naming the brand that I used to work with, I used to work with pretty much all of them across the board. And before I started doing that, I had no clue that industry existed. Okay, so the upper echelons is where this brand resides, and I got pally with the person who I was interacting with, and he says, "Hey Arvind, we want you to like give your opinion on how we can protect this bag of ours. Can I send it to you?" I said, Matt, I have no clue, so I'll need a bit of background and let me do some little bit more research, but send the product across. And lo and behold, the product came to us like about 15-20 days later, and I opened the box, and it was probably the most hideous thing that I've seen in my life, right? So it had legs. It literally had legs, like those, those ancient vintage chairs that you would have, literally like those, right?
You couldn't fit your phone in it.
And imagine
Fucking dumb shit.
a satchel which is ugly gold colored, with brown straps, I still remember, with goddamn legs on it. So I actually called the gentleman. I said, "What in God's name have you sent me? Because it seems like you shot something which is died in a bag. I fell on a set of legs and you sent it to me." And he was supremely offended. Of course, we'd become friends, so he saw the humor behind what I was saying.
But they don't even, they do it on purpose. They sell you ugly shit at a premium just to show you how much they own you. They put out a fucking garbage bag. At the Oscar 2 years ago, some Gwyneth Paltrow or some others, and she's carrying a Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Balenciaga, something, a big fucking garbage bag. It looks like a black garbage bag. It squinches up at the top, and that's style. And they do that to shove it in your face, to literally say, "Hey, we can sell you anything. That I will make complete shit. I will make it look like shit. I will make it look like a product you are scared of touching in your real life. Like, you don't touch garbage bags. That's your fundamental identity. I'm going to sell that shit to you.
Frankly, I do touch garbage bags. OCD, but...
And I'm going to put Louis Vuitton on it, and you're going to spend $2,000 for this, and that is how they control you. That, to me, is control like
it's control at a very different level.
Oh, that's like deep, deep psychological control.
Yeah, it's like I used to argue with my wife and say, why do you have to spend ridiculous amounts of money to get married? Right? It absolutely made no sense to me. But then it's been drilled down into your head, right? That it has to be a certain manner, right? And what if we don't call that one neighbor that we spoke to like 5,500 years ago, and he smiled at you and you felt it very nice? And it makes no sense to me. But some of these things will not make sense to some of us, because and it's been designed so that you catch the attention of a certain set yeah. So a lot of them have done it. There are stories about how Lucky Strike funded a medical campaign to actually claim that that smoking was beneficial to health.
And on the flip side, they also will fund a campaign to show how addictive smoking is. That to me, when I was like, okay, so they're doing that, it's not so bad for you, but hey, they're also doing that, hey, by the way, it's so addictive, right? You'd think that, all these studies about how addictive cigarettes are from anti-cigarette lobbies. No. The cigarette lobby. They're funded by cigarette lobbies so that in case you do start smoking, they know you're never going to leave because now you have this idea in your head that it's so addictive.
You know what? So I'll ask you to do this experiment. Yeah. Go to the next city or the town that's that you're in, for example, and see which is the first sort of prominent establishment that has come up and who's funded it. Yeah. Usually it'll be a clock tower or something of that nature, and it'll be funded by either a tobacco company, or it'll be Coke or Pepsi, one of these guys, or some other prominent, influential,
that's how tobacco
character.
Companies. That's how tobacco companies end up beating Tesla on ESG.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. They're beating an EV company somehow.
Yeah, right.
Inexplicably somehow.
And appropriating, a great man's name. Let's just put it that way. Anyway, that man is another. I'll require another podcast.
A separate podcast show only to be made.
Understanding Elon.
Understanding Elon. Chalo, man, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, man.
I think we could have gone on for a while.
Lot of fun.
This was a lot of fun. So Arvind doesn't take up cases in Mumbai. Not much anymore, at least. He's settled in Delhi despite the horrible pollution. So something must be really off with work in Bombay. Thank you for making the trip. And no. Bombay clients, please reach out.
And thank you for your time.
Right.
No. I've really enjoyed it. I was really looking forward to it. Thanks, guys, for having me here. I thought this is a very open and nice discussion as opposed to it being sort of fueled by specific propaganda-based questions, which generally tend to happen in such discussions. No. Really enjoyed it. Thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you so much. I tried my best with the propaganda questions, but you handled it really well.
You dodged them beautifully.
In fact, I just want to end by saying the most beautiful thing, very tongue-in-cheek, but I knew, and I was so happy that we had a lawyer on the podcast, because if you go back and you watch this episode, we opened with a question, and in the best lawyer fashion, you answered with a question, which I love. So, thank you.
17, 20 years of being in love with something like this, something ought to have rubbed off, right? So, cheers.
So, guys, that's it. That's it for the episode today. Thank you for watching. If you... Anything you want to plug, you don't
like, share, and subscribe. The Overcorrection podcast.
But if you have any, don't be scared of lawyers. They are not there for when shit hits the fan. They are to stop shit hitting the fan.
I agree.
Yes. Thank you for putting it in the words that I've been using for a long time, but I can't use on a forum like this.
I can say it. All right. Thanks for watching, everyone. This is the Overcorrection. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more.
Yep.
Cut.